Hello, everyone. I am so excited to introduce you to my guest today, a good friend of mine, Teresha Young. She is actually an international relationship master coach. So I was so excited to have her on. Today, we are going to discuss how do you know if he's the one? So ladies, grab your friends. Teresha, I am so excited to have you on the show today. Thank you so much. I've been waiting for weeks for this.
Thank you so much for having me, Mary Beth. It's such an honor and privilege to be here with you. I love this topic. I absolutely love this topic. And I just know that it's going to be such an exciting conversation. I too have been waiting weeks for this, thinking, when is it going to happen? And it's here. I can't wait to talk to you about it.
We
And
had a little bit of trouble with, well, you being in the UK, me being in the
yeah,
US with our, what is it? We still don't know our time difference. Is it 6 hours? Is it 5 hours? I don't know. But we figured it out. Here we are. And I'm going to go ahead and read your bio to the audience, if that's okay, so they know your background. So I'm going to go ahead and read this to you guys. Teresha Young is an accredited and certified international relationship master coach who primarily helps single and coupled up professional and entrepreneurial women to confidently receive and achieve a loving relationship where they feel secure, alive, and in their feminine energy. That is the acronym SAFE, S-A-F-E, secure, alive, and in their feminine energy. That's so cool, Teresha. So based in the UK with a global business, she has over 16 years experience of developing, coaching, and mentoring individuals, showing thousands of women how to find a deeper understanding of themselves to set themselves up for dating and relationship success. She is regularly invited as a guest speaker and to share her expertise and publications on the topic of dating and relationships. Her relationship and coaching articles have been featured in online publications such as Thrive Global, theuniversetalks.com, which is TUT.com, the International Coaching News, or ICN, The Ladies Coach, and Couples Learn. Her podcast, it's Relationship Talk, the podcast, and Real, R-E-A-L, delivers open, non-judgmental, heart-to-heart conversations about love, self-love, self-care, dating, and relationships with special guests, including the world-renowned relationship expert and television personality, Paul C. Brunson. And I love that episode. You guys have to tune in. Find Teresha on YouTube, but I'm going to leave all of her links underneath this video for you to find her. You've got to watch that one in particular. He's fantastic. Like, did you say that Oprah found him and like he only had like 11 followers at the time?
absolutely. So just a little bit of background behind that. And thank you for that wonderful introduction there. So
Oh,
Paul C. Brunson, so basically he was on YouTube and getting about 11 viewers at that time. And he was a bit discouraged, thinking, he knew that most of those viewers were probably his family and friends too, as they are. But lo and behold, one of those viewers was actually Oprah. And she loved his work and she invited him onto her show, and they started up a TV show where he was supporting relationships, lifestyle, and natural fact, Oprah has said that he is much more than a matchmaker because it's what he's known for too. So, it was an incredible conversation with him. Yes, I do also invite you to check that one out. But Mary Beth, I also invite people to listen to our episode. Oh my
our
goodness.
episode is going to be amazing, ladies. And gentlemen, I think you guys can learn a lot from this because we're going to be talking about you. So you might want to know what's being said about how to find the one. This is what women are going to be looking for. So they, as green flags, right? Green flags. We're going to talk about some red flags too, but we're going to talk about both. We're going to talk about both. So like, what are the signs? Like, how do you know, we date so much, like, because of dating apps, we have access to so many people. And actually that was going to be my first question. How dating can be so tricky these days with all these dating apps and modern technology. We get such incredible access to so many different people. Are there any red flags on these dating profiles that my audience should recognize and avoid?
Great questions, because we hear so much about red flags, don't we? And I actually think the reason why there appears to be so many red flags is because people aren't necessarily doing the inner work themselves. So even before you get yourself onto a dating app, it's really important to know what you are bringing to the table. So For example, if you've got any relationship traumas, any relationship patterns that haven't served you, or any learnings from previous relationships, it could even be attachment styles, for example, that you may be carrying around with yourself, anything from childhood. If there's anything lingering, the baggage that I like to call it, it's really important that you address those things first, because something that might appear as a red flag on a dating profile might not necessarily appear from it, but it's because you got burnt in the past by somebody else, and
Yeah.
suddenly it's like a red flag to you. But if you've done the healing, and healing is a journey, it's not necessarily a destination, but you've started that work on yourself, then you're going to have a greater sense of who you are, what your values are, what your boundaries are, your preferences, your deal breakers, your non-negotiables, all of those key elements, your goals, your love vision. You have to do that work first. You absolutely have to do that first before you even get onto a dating app. That's what I would say, because that clarity is going to attract what it is you desire. So
Yeah.
once you're on the dating app, what are the kind of red flags that may jump out? Because there are some typical ones that I would say.
Yeah, there's some that are actually red flags, because there's
There
some
are,
that,
no,
like,
actually are.
we can be anxious, like if we've been cheated on and then someone reminds you of your ex who cheated on you, and just it could be some little similarity, and we're maybe connecting dots that aren't really there because we haven't worked on ourselves yet. That
Absolutely.
programming.
Yeah, that programming, that belief system that you may have. So if it is kind of being triggered from something in the past, then there's still some inner work to be doing. Now, actual things that you can look at on the dating app and think, oh, it might even give you the ick. You might be like, oh, that doesn't feel so good.
Mhm.
Is firstly, have a look at the profile. You're going to have a look at the profile. Now, sometimes people will go on there, and something that actually really makes me curious is those really fuzzy pictures that seems like someone zoomed in on it and they've cropped themselves, and it just
Oh
doesn't look like a
yeah.
very clear picture. And you're like, and how old is that? It's so distorted, you can't even see much in it anyway. So really, you want really clear photos, and photos that not only show people socializing maybe in a group, because sometimes you can find that there are just photos upon photos of people being out in a group, and it's like, so what do you do as a single person, because you're going to be dating that single person, not the group.
Right,
So
right.
it's understanding a bit more about the actual photo and how that person is showing up. I would say sunglasses. Is somebody's
Yeah.
profile just sunglasses? Like the first picture might be them wearing sunglasses. You want to look into that person's eyes. You want to see what they're about. But there's this thing, I don't know whether people think it's a cool thing. I look really cool. I look really chill with my sunglasses. No, drop the sunglasses, okay? Because people want to know who they're going to be looking at. And they say that the eyes are the window of the soul, isn't it?
Yes.
So it's
I
like,
need to see the eyes are very important to
yeah.
me. You could tell so much about a person, just that. I mean, I feel like you can feel their energy through a picture,
Oh,
and then especially their eyes more than anything else.
absolutely. Now, how many people listening to this episode right now has been complimented because of their eyes?
Yeah.
And it could be just being a picture when somebody looks at you. So it can actually be a real attractor to show your eyes, show yourself smiling as well. So like the little smiles that you can get, the smiling of the eyes, it's so great, and it can be such an attracting factor. So drop the sunglasses, pictures with you, sunglasses, just drop it, ladies. If you're watching this and you're thinking, really, you want pictures without the sunglasses.
Yeah. Yeah.
I reiterate
Yeah.
about the sunglasses. Um, I think actually looking, so this may sound really superficial, but I just think we need to get there, is that again, people can be hiding certain things in their profile picture. Some pictures are very dated. They can be years old in the pictures. So just be very mindful that some of the pictures might not be so recent when it comes to the
Mhm.
pictures. And also overly using filters, because
Yeah.
we're in that world now where people love to do a filter on their picture, and then it does kind of perhaps maybe set that person up for disappointment when they see you in real life, because it's just not really, we've got to be honest, we're looking for a catalog. We're looking for a catalog. You want to see what you're buying in a way, like you would
It's
look for a
false
catalog.
advertising. This
It's
false
false.
advertising when you over filter. I mean, I think it's okay to have a little bit of a, smooth out your skin a tad, but you don't
Oh
want to
yeah.
look like a completely different person. And then people, yeah, the disappointment. And then it also is a little deceptive, wouldn't you say?
I would say so, absolutely, because again, we have to remember that people are going onto these apps and sometimes they're going onto it very quickly. So the investor time into actually going through can actually be something that takes them some effort to do.
Yeah, it's
So
like homework.
that is, it can be like homework. That's a really good, actually, if I can just digress a little bit before you go onto the app, it's really important, I think, you get yourself into the right energy space for it because a lot of people are going onto these apps really late at night. They've had a long day at work. And it's kind of like a second thing, a last minute thing they do before bed sometimes for people or in the evenings. So I am a firm believer about, what we put out there in terms of energy is what we would attract. So if you can get yourself into a practice of just sending thanks to the universe for
Oh,
the
yeah.
experience that you're going to have on this app, thank you for the growth, for the availability of people, to be able to look through. And I would also say when you are swiping left or that person isn't for you, thank that person for coming
Bless
into your
them.
bless them, bless them. They might not be the one for you, but then bless them that they find a person for them. Because we can get frustrated. And when we're in that frustrated, oh, another one, another one, another one.
Yeah,
That energy just kind of seeps into the next person who actually might be the right person. You swipe right, So I have to say, bless that person, bless that energy. It just comes from that really good high vibrational frequency that you can do there. So that was a bit of a
absolutely. I
now
was
when
going
it
to
comes
say too
yeah,
that, like, if we are, so part of the reason I personally avoid dating apps now, I used to be on them, but I didn't like that energy that you're talking about, where I started to get like, almost like we need an attitude of gratitude, as you said earlier. We need to be
mm,
thankful, and I started to feel like it was a lot of work and a lot of disappointment. And then I could tell, like, I was like, I could tell that I'm putting out that energy, and I felt it was dehumanizing, kind of the
yeah,
swiping thing. And then I ended up paying, and this is an option, ladies. You can actually
mm,
pay extra so you could see everybody who's already selected you, and then you don't have to do it. That I liked that so much better, and it's not that much, that's not like that expensive, like $15 extra for the whole month.
yeah.
To where that takes away that swiping. You could see everyone who's already selected you and avoid the swiping. If you're like me and you just feel guilty, just
Yeah,
discard,
yeah,
trash.
absolutely. And that's a really fair point that you make there, because if you pay that little bit extra to see who has shown an interest in you first, then it opens up that conversation even more easily because there's something
Mhm.
about your profile that was attracted to them. So then
Right.
you can go in and then you can ask those curious questions about it. So when it comes to the dating profiles, again, it's about managing your time. Maybe going on it every single day isn't for you. Maybe it's like, I will go on it maybe twice a week, maybe 3 times, because I really need to protect my energy because I'm getting frustrated and getting disappointed. I'm feeling guilty about swiping. So just manage how you navigate the dating app. So back to when you're on it. Now, another red flag is to look out for the things that perhaps aren't there. So sometimes people will hide information from it, information that typically would be there, such as height. So
Hmm.
again, most people would be very comfortable with putting their height on. Star signs, some people aren't really bothered, they won't put something on, but something that's quite crucial when it comes to people's preferences these days, not to say you can't be open-minded and open up your mind to it, that could be a huge factor for people. So why have you not disclosed your height? And
Yeah,
no,
we're,
I
we're
know
gonna find out when we meet you in person. It's kind of like the filter thing. It's the same thing, a
yeah,
little bit deceptive. Just be open, because men who are listening, you only want to attract the women anyway who are cool with your height. If you're 5'3", you want that person who's like, hey, I'm only 5 foot. That's tall to
yeah,
me.
absolutely. And that's the thing. The more that we go and we are quote unquote deceptive, or we're not showing up as our real self and who we want to be, we're going to attract more of that energy. And you're
Mm.
absolutely right there in terms of you personally, you filter out the people who aren't for you. So go on there, be transparent with what you want to say. I would also say, and another red flag when it comes to dating profiles is the amount of information on the profile. So for me, for example, I'm a massive communicator. If I was to go into a dating profile and it looks like that person hasn't really filled out much on there, they haven't really disclosed much, they haven't gone into much depth in that what they put on their bio. For me, that feels like an instant turn off. The reason being is that I would want to attract somebody whose communication is very similar. to
Right.
myself. So again, if you are somebody who likes to go into detail and you are very, communicatively vulnerable, and you go into a profile and that person is like they've just done that really quickly, that person might not be a communication match for you. It's just to be mindful of it, not to say to red flag, run away, but it's just saying, just be mindful that actually that could be their communication style. And if it is, that could cause you a whole lot of frustrations when it comes to connecting with somebody.
When I see that, I always think like that they're just not taking it seriously. That's the feeling that I get. Like, man, they're not even seeing it's important enough to fill out a profile completely. So then that it's like I'm being serious. I'm intentionally dating. I'm in here for that, and they're just like whatever, And it just doesn't seem like okay. They might, and that's okay for people who just want to casually date. But it's
Mm.
it's it's not going to be a good vibrational match for somebody who is being more intentional about dating and is looking for something long term and not casual.
Definitely. It's almost like applying for a job and you have your CV,
Yes.
but you only put your name on it. You know, it's like, why would the employer take you
Yeah.
on or even want to interview you if you only put your name on it? So go into more details. We have to sell ourselves and sell ourselves from a place of truth and realness, because we can go out there and we can filter and we can just not actually say on our profile what we want to say. And as you said, Mary Beth, the people who are for you will match with you
Yes.
and will see that. But do go into a little bit of detail, show that you spent some time and dedication on it. Of course, if you're out there casually dating, then in your bio, you probably have stated you're not sure what you're looking for, or
Yes.
something along those lines that will indicate that that person is not sure. Again, another red flag for somebody. If somebody has, you put in your bio that you are maybe looking for something long term, or you're looking for a life partner or something, and somebody wants to match with you who says they're not sure, it's kind of like you could, explore that with that person, but equally, that person is probably dipping their toes in just to see what it's like. And if you are relationship minded and relationship ready, that could prolong the connection process. So just be mindful of those little things too that can show up on a dating profile.
And I think, ladies, I think a lot of us, we want to take that on as a challenge almost. We want to change men and just, and I don't think that's a good idea. People show you who they are, believe them, right? If a guy's saying he's not looking for something serious, don't go, oh, well, when he meets me, he's going to want to be in some, don't try to change people, just accept it at face value. They're letting you know up front that they don't want anything serious. If you want to explore it anyway, like, okay, you could maybe date that guy casually and in the background look for somebody else long term. That's fine. But I think that we need to try to get over trying to change men. When they tell us who they are, believe them.
Absolutely. Because I have to say, many people, many women, many men as well, will take on people as a project. It's like,
Yes.
oh, I can change that person, and that person's got huge potential. Don't fall for somebody's potential, because if they never get there, you're stuck with what you got. So it's a case of just having to, like, people have potential, but if they never change, you have to be comfortable with that, to say, well, I see them for where they are now, and if that never changes, it never changes, but I see them for
Yes.
where but you have to be mindful that as a person you are growing. So whilst that person may never change, you may change as a person, and that may mean that your course of your journey of life may go in a different direction. So
Right.
what I love about the word relationship is that it can be split into two words. You've got relation and then you've got ship. So the relation part is how you relate to each other,
Mhm.
as individuals and then also as a couple. And then the ship means that you are both sailing the same ship and you
Oh,
are
yeah.
going to the same destination and you are going in the same direction to get there. So when the course starts to change and one person's sailing there and the other person's sailing there, it's time to have a discussion,
Yeah.
about where's the destination? Has the destination changed? Because sometimes the destination can change. So there is so much that can pop up when it comes to dating. Someone's not going to change, or somebody shows you who they are, believe them. Okay, there is potential, but see them for where they are now.
And you're right. People can change. Like, maybe in the beginning they really saw that you guys had this, but people grow, they grow apart, and that's just human nature. There's nothing wrong with that. And, we got to accept that and move on. When it's time to move on, we can't try to fit, a square peg into a round hole like
Yeah.
many of us do, or, force somebody to bend to our will just because they initially thought maybe that could work. And then it turns out, after you get to know somebody for a while, maybe you're not the best match, that you thought you were, and that's okay. And it's okay to let somebody go and move on and find somebody who's a better match.
Absolutely. And a lot of this we have to remember comes from our biology as well, because back in the days when we were fighting for survival as women, we would often compete with other women in order to get the man in.
Yeah.
So when we are on a dating app, it's almost like we are competing with the other women out there to say, I'm going to get that person, I'm going to get that man. So therefore our survival mechanism can kick in and we want to get that man. And then when we get him, he will change for us. We will move mountains for us, or something will change. So a lot of it we have to remember is through our DNA, is biological. But just because that's where we were thousands of years ago, it doesn't mean where we have to be now. We can use our discernment in order to make decisions that are more current with where we are in life and in social life and culturally too.
But even in like India, there's still arranged marriages, and it's very much like
Yeah.
not survival and as like it used to be, like you're talking about, but in a way, there are culturally in India, places like that, there's still matchmaking going on where the families
Yeah.
are setting their daughters up for someone to take care of them. So
Yeah.
it is a type of survival, financial survival, and that's still going on. And I was just Jonathan Asley actually sent me a video where that showed all the divorce rates in all the different countries, and India only had a 1%. The others were astronomical. And I'm like, isn't that interesting? And I mean, that's obviously cultural. Like they do the
Mm.
matchmaking, not everybody, but a lot
Yeah.
of that, I guess it's values. It's just like if they just don't accept it, they don't accept divorce as something as an option. So therefore,
Absolutely.
there's not a divorce rate. It's
Yeah.
1%. They're probably
1%.
Americans living in India.
Yeah. And my view on this as well is that actually there can be some merit to some of the old traditional ways of how we used to date, where family and friends would get involved to share their view on whether they thought that person was a good person or a good match for you. Because sometimes we can go in there and we can have clouded judgment about somebody, and it really is a good opportunity for close family, friends, and um, people who know you very well just to share their thoughts on it. So some of the traditional ways of actually dating could help us filter out the people that aren't for us, but we're really just finding people, we're falling for people, and then afterwards your family and friends will sometimes say, you know what, I kind of wasn't feeling that person. I kind of wasn't feeling that person. Didn't want to say anything because you seem to be very happy. So if you can get your family's opinions, or friends' opinions on somebody, even if you're just sharing with them how you're feeling at the moment, to say kind of like, I'm really falling for this guy. You know me very well. And
Mhm.
so what are some of the things that I am missing here? What are my blind spots, really? So that I can go into this dating situation a little bit more open-minded and thinking more clearly without just kind of being maybe in limerence or lust, some of these other dating experiences that we can have.
A
So
chemical
sometimes
haze, I call it. I'm in a chemical haze. You
I
can't see
love that term.
straight.
I
You
love
can't
that
see
term. A chemical haze. I am in a chemical haze, and I'm going to fully accept that I'm in a chemical haze.
straight.
Now, I need you to help me to see clearly through this chemical haze, because at the moment it's a bit cloudy. So, yeah, absolutely. I would say that there's some merit behind there, but there are some cultural differences. That means that some marriages are lasting and the divorce rates are lower. It doesn't always indicate, though, a healthy, happy, safe relationship.
Exactly. And that was something else that I was thinking when I was like, you know what, the longevity of a marriage doesn't necessarily mean a healthy marriage. You could be miserable, and that just means your marriage lasted a long time and you didn't, and you just accepted it. You
Yeah.
accepted maybe even some abuse, and you just stayed in something that was not healthy. That's not to be celebrated. I want to make sure that we make that
Mm.
clear. That's
Mm.
not something to be celebrated, is just to stay in a marriage that's really abusive or not happy, because we only live once. We want to live life to the fullest, and
Yeah.
it's okay to move on. But that's a really great point. I'm glad we brought that up, actually.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And as you read out in my bio, my acronym spells SAFE. So for me, when it comes to
Yes.
dating and when it comes to relationships, it's all about number one, safety and how safe you feel. So when you are on these dating apps and you are seeing red flags, it's about really tapping into what is going on when you are reading into this. Now, how do you feel when you are seeing some of the pictures or some of the profiles? What are you sensing in your body? Particularly, I always want to talk to the women that I work with, because our body is the home of the feminine energy. So it really is, it's just tapping into your body. How does that actually make you feel? What sensations were coming up for you when you looked at that profile? I know women have looked at profiles where there's like group photos and that person is drinking, got a beer in their hand, or something in their hand, or out partying. And they're like, oh, seems like a fun person. In the short term, that person might be
Mhm.
fun, but long term, is that really going to be of a suitable viability for you long
Mhm.
term as well? So it really is tapping into all of your senses when you are dating as well. So it's not just the visual swipe, swipe, swipe. It's like, what am I feeling? How is that showing up for me?
Our intuition. So you're saying
Yeah,
tap into your intuition, and
absolutely.
that's where you'll find your discernment. Like you'll be able to discern
Mm.
once you like actually use that intuition, and don't ignore it. Don't ignore it. Teresha, I don't think my intuition's ever been wrong, but I've definitely ignored it a lot and then
Oh,
regretted it.
oh, yeah, absolutely. It is your inner GPS system.
Yes.
And I actually heard the other day, I think it might have been Lisa Nichols. I think she referred to it as your God protection system. So
Ooh,
exactly, it's like you are being
love that.
protected when it comes to your intuition. It's keeping you safe there. So it's not always easy to follow it. You
Hmm.
hear it, but whether you follow
Sometimes you
it,
just want to play it out and see what happens.
yes, and sometimes the temptation's real, right?
Yeah,
Sometimes,
that's right.
oh,
That's right.
really, really we're humans. No, we're going to
I've
be
literally played
tempted.
it out just to see if it was right, just to see if my
Yeah.
and I've done that recently, even just to, and then it was like it's kind of like I'm just checking on my intuition, like, yep, you were right.
Yeah,
And then
absolutely.
when I do stuff like that, I always stay detached. You know what I mean? So it's not like I'm setting myself up for anything because I'm going in with my eyes wide open.
Yeah. It's so important to be detached actually, because then you are setting up, you're managing your expectations really. So if it is, I'm just going to test this one out, you're coming from a place of love as well when you're doing this. It's just to test that intuition and to not be attached to the outcome, because then we can set ourselves up for disappointment, or even actually starting to feel attached to
Yeah.
whatever that person is.
Yeah. Did he, if he didn't text you right away? So okay, wait, just to go over the red flags that we've done
Yeah.
so far. Okay, so we were talking about the content, like you need to have enough communication and content on your profile, no
Yeah.
sunglasses, the picture needs to not be too filtered or too fuzzy or old. Um, and then, so you want someone to have the same similar communication style. So pay attention to how they type on their profile. If they're a good communicator and you're a good communicator, that's a great match.
Yeah.
What about anything about lifestyles, values? Like, do guys even get into that on their profiles or no?
Well, sometimes you don't find that level of depth when it comes to my values are. Now, I know that some people do go into that level of depth, and that could be a really great indication as to that person's level of personal development and their
Yeah,
growth. Because to actually start talking about values and emotional availability and physical availability, that means that that person has been doing, I would say, an element of personal development or self growth work. And if that's for you, that could be a huge green flag for you.
yeah,
However, sometimes you can see whether your values are being met through what the picture says. So, for example, that person might have a picture of them doing a bit of charity work, and your
yeah.
value is kindness. And you see them a picture doing some sort of charity work, supporting people in some way. They haven't stated that their value is kind, but you can see from the picture that they appear to be a kind person.
Mhm.
So you go in to that, because remember, we are, powerful people, and we are in control of this. So you can go in and you can say, what is that picture showing me? What is the communication showing me? What am I feeling? What am I sensing from that as well? So because we are in this microwave society, we want to do everything really quickly. We could actually sometimes be swiping left on somebody who is actually right. So,
Yeah.
but we haven't just taken that time to go a little bit more into the depth of that profile.
Like we could be actually, a lot of us ladies could be going through a phase of life where we're superficial and we're looking for the looks. I think especially I would say after my divorce, there's a learning curve, right? There's a learning curve when you, after a divorce, and then you go back into dating and what you want. I think that I definitely was less intentional and more into superficial things. This was a long time ago,
Yeah.
but now I'm all about what is does their lifestyle match with mine? Where do they, I want to know, like usually on their profile, I could see, they might say something about wanting to live by a beach, which is what I want to do. So that's, two thumbs up. Or if they mention their values or what they like to do for fun, if in the past, very different. I'm looking, if they're talking about going to clubs or not clubs, bars, drinking and stuff. That would have been great back then when I first got divorced and stuff. But now that's not really what I want to be doing, spending my time is in a bar. I want somebody who's more into, self-improvement and personal development and things like that. So I would look at the profiles today completely different than I would have looked at it, in my late 20s and through my 30s, right? It's
Yeah.
things shift. And
Yeah.
so we want to find someone who's on that same page, or else we're just setting ourselves up for disappointment.
Yeah. And I absolutely agree with what you're saying there. The age demographics is really important, because if you are somebody who isn't really into the clubbing and the dating, and you're seeing lots of pictures of somebody out there who seems to be clubbing, dating, out all the time, socializing, that might not be for you. If you're looking for somebody who's more settled, then also something on the profile that you see a lot of is want to travel. I want to travel, 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 travel. And that could actually be a huge red flag for somebody who wants to settle down and actually
Right,
spend more
right.
time domestically doing activities in home. Because if you're traveling, that's a lot of upheaval, really, to be going traveling the world. How many times do you want to do that? And of course, for people who are equally travelers, that could be for you, absolutely for you. But equally, if you're somebody who's a bit more of a homebody, wants to do more domestic activities here, then somebody who wants to travel might not be the right person for you at this time.
Or if you're a
So,
single mom like we were, and then
yeah,
you still are, we still
yeah,
are, I guess. I mean, my
yeah,
son's almost 21, so I
yeah.
can I can date whoever I want now. But back in the
But
day,
different.
I would have been like, I can't
Yeah,
leave my son. I mean, that's
absolutely.
not part of my lifestyle.
So a red flag, again, let's move on to that, is when somebody hasn't read your bio. So they've come straight into you. And for example, they can see you in your bio, you might have said that I'm a single mom. And in your mind, if you're somebody who wants to travel and you've connected with somebody who is a single mom, then where's your level of understanding about that person,
Awareness. Yeah.
awareness of being able, that person might be able to travel. This is a single mom. No, come on. So I would say one of the red flags, because it's about people's attention and curiosity. So if they come and they've connected with you and they haven't even said anything about your bio, for example, or they asked you something that was on your bio, then doesn't make you feel special. It doesn't make you feel important. So again, and it's not to say that you have to be condescending in any way, but you could go back and, let's say someone's matched with you, and to say, no, very interesting. No, thank you for connecting. It's nice to meet you, nice to have matched with you. I've noticed that you travel. You will have noticed, or you may have noticed, that I'm a single mom and that traveling isn't something that I can do. Then you can explore that conversation a little bit more. But I would say that if they haven't really read your bio, then it shows you a little bit of
They're just
their
going by
initial.
the picture. They're like, oh, she looks hot. Boom, she looks hot, and
Yeah,
they're not really going any further than surface level. I had a
yeah,
friend who actually, when she first got on the dating apps, this is a while back, but she was a vegetarian. She's married now, but she was a vegetarian. And like, she would get a lot of hunters. Like, they were like asking her on dates. And she's like, what in the hell you think? Why would a vegetarian be a good match for a hunter? It's just like, and she could tell exactly what you're saying right now is they weren't actually reading her
reading.
profile.
Or maybe they saw it as a challenge and thought, we can make her eat meat.
She will be a carnivore.
She will, exactly. She will only ever eat meat. But it's the kind of situation where, yes, you want somebody who has paid attention, because that's a good indication. But these are all indicators. We're not
Yeah.
saying it's set in stone, but these are indicators, is their level of interest and curiosity going into that dating experience. And if they can open up we're probably moving more into green flags here, but if they can open
I
up
was
with
going to
something,
say, yeah, we've kind of mentioned some green flags
yeah,
inadvertently by talking about the
yeah,
red flags. Yeah.
exactly,
Mhm.
absolutely. So then moving into the green flags, if somebody's opening sentence with you on a dating app is something that they've noticed in your profile, and it might not even necessarily be because, oh yes, you'll get the people, oh, you look hot, great. If you're looking for something deeper and not so superficial, and they've noticed something about your interest and they've asked you a question about it that you've not put on your bio, then that's a green flag. It shows you
Yeah.
that they have shown some interest there. Of course, we're not saying that all green flags mean that this is the one,
Right.
but it shows you a level of indication of interest and that person is serious about connecting with somebody.
I love it. So,
So,
what other green flags have we missed?
mm, you know what? When you said it's kind of like inadvertently talking about the green flags when we've spoken about the red flags, they are
Mhm.
kind of like the opposite of what the
Yeah,
red flags are.
that's
So, for example,
true.
isn't it? But when you think about it,
Mhm.
if you then see a picture, a photo where that person has great body language, for example, they look like they're happy. There isn't, okay, so actually, I'm going to bounce back into red flag. Something that I think is a big red flag as well is when you see something like positivity only or positive vibes only or no drama needed, those type of things, because if you actually have to state it, that shows
Mhm.
you that we all have past, but again that person might not necessarily be over that experience,
Yeah.
because yes, we are in a world where we will have our ups and we will have our downs, so we're not going to be positive all of the time, positive, quote unquote positive. So if someone's stating that, then that means that how flexible are they going to be for you when you're having a bad day, for example, and you're not being
Right.
a positive person, you haven't got these high vibes, are they then going to push you away? If they've got an avoidant attachment style, they'll be like, oh, okay, here we go. I haven't got time for this. So
You're
those things
being
can,
negative, you're being dramatic. That's
yeah,
actually
exactly.
a
Being
form of
oversensitive.
emotional abuse by not allowing you, not validating your feelings and not letting you talk. And, I'm so glad you brought this up because I'm huge on toxic positivity because I used to be, when I first learned about the law of attraction, I'm a law of attraction coach too.
Yeah,
And when I first learned about it, we tend to go to that extreme at first. Good vibes only, positive vibes only. Like you think, I thought many years ago, that's how you had to be. Like, it was kind of like Pollyanna, and I didn't want anybody, can you imagine as a life coach now, like me not allowing people to, nope, sorry, positive vibes only. I couldn't have any clients, because that's not, you can't help anybody. You're literally blocking people out who need help by saying
yeah,
positive vibes only. And that is why it's toxic. And like you're saying, if someone's like, no drama,
no,
sometimes those are the biggest drama. Even the men, like I have had men like I don't do drama, and they end up being the more drama queens than any woman
yeah,
I've ever known. And that's a red flag right there. We got back to red flags,
absolutely. Yeah,
but
it
yeah,
is. We bounce back, but it's equally important to talk about it because it's a huge projection of
yeah,
their own self, perhaps no drama, but then they may bring the drama. So it's those kind of things. You want somebody who's going to show that actually they are flexible. It's not necessarily what happens, it's how they navigate it, So a huge thing about when it comes to conflict management is about how you manage it, it's how you deal with those tricky situations. So I would say if you are seeing language, let's pop back into the green flags, language that are more inclusive, language, somebody who is actually taking time to fill out their profile, they've gone into some depth, the pictures look very authentic, and you just sense something about that, because this is why it's so important for you to know what you are looking to attract as well. What are the qualities, putting aside physical attributes, what are the qualities of somebody that we want? We'll be careful with that word quality,
mhm.
but
Oh yeah. Oh, I'm triggered. I'm triggered. No,
yeah,
that's an inside joke, you guys. Sorry.
we won't use high value or high quality, but what we will
Let's
do,
not use
but
it.
no, we are looking about the characteristics in somebody. So what are the characteristics that you are looking for in somebody, really? Because then you can sense that when it comes to the initial profile, when you go into that bio as well. Now, how is it feeling for you? Does it look like they have included their full self, they're being really authentic in it? So you are looking for a depth in that profile, really, which is a huge green flag. And then I think a lot of the the extra part comes from when you start to communicate, because that is where I guess you will understand a bit more about that person's values, about their goals, about their intentions,
Yeah.
actually, and how soon. If that person is indicating to you, let's meet, let's get off the app. Like I want to see you in person. Let's stop with this back and forth communication. You're not a pen pal. I don't want a pen pal. So let's meet up in person and do that as soon as possible. And it's entirely up to you. I'll say it's personal preference when it comes to whether you do not give your telephone number, for example, to that person until you've met them in person. Because for some people, they don't want to move. You often get people saying, let's move to WhatsApp or something like that.
Yeah.
Again, that's your personal number. You have to remember that person's got your number, and you may feel more safety by just keeping the communication on the app until you meet them in person. Then you may say, okay, we're going to move to a second date. Let's then now share personal numbers. So just be very mindful about it. Or I think you can get Google numbers or whatever you can, or
Yeah.
whatever platform numbers, in order just to protect your telephone number too.
Yeah, my number's all over the place, and I kind of have the attitude, and I know like sometimes people just don't feel safe, or it's just next logical step in the dating process. But I just block people if I need to block
Yeah.
them. It's an option on your iPhone, right? Like I have an iPhone, and it's like just block them. Like my number's already so public anyway. It is what it is. It comes with the territory. So are there any other green flags that you would like to discuss before we move on to the next question?
Yeah. Again, I would say, just to kind of close off what I was saying about the meetup, is that that person is also making some suggestions. Now, I'm not saying that it has to be the man making all of the suggestions, or it has to be the woman. Feel into what comes very naturally. If somebody is interested in you, they're going to make that move. They will absolutely make that move. You won't
Yeah.
have this kind of ambiguity or any lack of clarity into whether that person's interested into you, because if they are, they will certainly show up for you. So again, that's some
Right.
green flag.
Right. I always kind of felt like if somebody disappeared, that's because they're already not making me a priority, but they're talking to so many other women in the background that I'm just going to move on to somebody who is like, oh, going to be all about me, at least, in the beginning, at least, 'cause, but like you said earlier, like we're all kind of competing with each other. There's so many women out there on the dating apps, but I just think to me that's an indicator. If somebody's not communicating quickly enough, like there's days go by, and before that they were back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Suddenly it's days. I think, do you think that's an indicator that probably they have things going on in the background, like extenuating circumstances, or it's just their communication style?
Yeah. And that's something to establish right from the get-go, I would say, particularly if something's changed. So as a coach, I always like to notice patterns when it comes to our behaviors, when it comes to communication. So a one-time situation, they might not have responded to you within 24 hours. One time, really, they come back to you. Okay. You don't necessarily have to say, I cannot believe that it took you one day to come back to me. It is like that could just
Stressed
be
out
a
about
one. I stressed
it.
out about it. Okay, not to say that it would have caused you some anxiety, because it's out of the normal, not to say that,
Mhm.
but you might not just have to make it into a huge dramatical kind of thing. But if it's starting to happen 2 times, 3 times, and you've noticed it, then you've got some evidence to go back to the person to say, I noticed that in the beginning, our communication was a lot more fluid, and I would hear from you how many times I would hear from you, because you've got some
Mhm.
evidence there to show. I've noticed that I'm hearing from you less, just wanting to check that everything's okay. So
Yes.
it's that caring side, because there might not be okay. There could be some personal things happening in that person's life
Mhm.
that you don't know about. Stresses at work, family dynamics, all of these kind of things. So you don't want to make any assumptions. If they
Right.
come back, they say, yeah, it's fine. Then
So,
that kind of opens up the door to say, oh, okay, so if everything's fine, I'm curious. I'm curious as to why I'm hearing less from you, because I feel, so start to use some I statements, some feeling statements. I feel disappointed or let down or worried or concerned when I don't hear from you because, and then you say the reason why. This is all about communication, really,
yeah.
and how you express yourself, because if you go in there, you aren't showing me any attention, or you don't care about me because your communications change. That finger pointing really is accusational and it's blaming, and people put up their defense mechanisms and they don't respond or they retaliate. And that's not, we want non-violent communication, basically, when
Right.
it when it
Yeah,
comes to our
definitely.
relationship dynamics.
So open up the lines of communication. I feel there was a shift from where they just want to make sure everything's okay, not be
Yeah.
accusatory. Because when yeah, yeah, you're just going to put them in defense mode if you start accusing
Oh,
them of something, because we really don't
absolutely.
know until we ask. And
Yeah.
I'm just an advocate of like not playing games from the beginning. Because
Mm.
if you start a dating relationship out playing games, you're going to have to always play games. Like, when does that stop? You know, like it's just like, for me personally, if a guy does the 3 day thing, like we all know, like, oh, like you go on a
Hmm.
date, you know it was
Yeah.
fantastic, you know he liked you, but then he waits 3 days. To me, that's out, because I actually do not want to play games. I'm not into it. I see right through them. So like, I'm a human bullshit detector at this point of my life. And if a guy's gonna do that to me, I know he's playing a game, and I just want someone who's sincere and authentic and doesn't feel like he needs to play a game
Yeah.
to get me.
Yeah.
And if he
Yeah.
does, it's showing me kind of a lack of confidence. Like, you got to play games.
Mm. Yeah, it's manipulative behavior.
I do
And
think
when we
it
are
is.
going out there, in order to play games and you're not being your true self, then eventually the mask will drop and the
Yes.
true self and your authentic self will shine through at some point. And that person who they liked in the start might not be the person that they have now got. So I'm not into playing games whatsoever. If you feel that you want to communicate with that person, communicate. Because there are some people saying, yeah, but doesn't it look eager? Don't I look like I've got nothing else going on
So,
with my life? Now, it depends upon what are you compromising. So, for example, let's say you are being really, really responsive. Every single time that person texts you, you're on it, but it means it's at the detriment of your work, for example, or at the detriment of your social life or something like that.
mhm.
If it's at the detriment of something, then perhaps that behavior needs to change. You have to look into yourself to say, but if you've got the time and a message comes through and you have the time generally to respond, or you've got a phone call, pick it up.
Yeah,
Because again, you're coming from a place of not having to hide. It's not this, there's no deceit behind it. It's not manipulative. You're just being yourself, really.
right.
And if it turns another person off you,
It's not
then
your
I know
person.
it's so hard. I know, and we will say that throughout our discussion. And that's such a hard pill to swallow because
Yeah.
people are desperate for relationships and connections. But what is happening is that they're getting themselves into relationships that aren't fulfilling, that aren't healthy, and that
Mhm.
are like, under false pretense. And then they end up either in that relationship for a lifetime or the relationship comes to an end because from the start, there was never a match.
Yeah.
Really, but they got themselves into that relationship for whatever reason it is, and this is so why that inner work to be doing and constantly reflecting on yourself throughout the dating experiences. And when it comes to dating, having that post dating analysis afterwards, after you've met somebody, is really important to critique it. Like if you've gone to a job interview, you probably would sit back and say, oh, how did I perform there? You might say, no, did I showcase myself well? What were some of the positives from that experience? What were some of the things that didn't go so well? Also, sense that, have that inner work after a dating experience, because there could have been some signs when you're on the date that there wasn't a connection, or
Yep.
for example there are some green flags that come up whilst you're on a date too, as opposed to red flags. So if you're on a date and that person is asking you questions, they're really super curious about it, they're not monopolizing the conversation, because there's a difference between being interested and interesting. You want to strike a balance, you still want to be interesting, and share your world, be vulnerable, open up, but then also interested in the other person. So has
Yeah.
that person been asking you some questions about themselves? We have to remember though, sometimes people have first date nerves, second date nerves, so they
Yeah.
might not necessarily speak up as much, but there will still be a level of curiosity, bouncing back, fluidity in that conversation. And their body language too. Sometimes I've known people who've been on dates and they've said something and suddenly it's like it has repelled that person, so they start to shift back, you know their legs start to get crossed over, and you can sense that they just are pushing themselves away. But positive body language is that person coming into you, you know,
Mhm.
opening up their arms, looking really open, their eye contact as well. Are they smiling when they're talking? No, really look into to all of that. Get out of yourself and actually look at the other person and assess the whole environment too.
Be observant. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that actually is good. So for the next question, let's say you go on a first date and you really enjoyed the date, like for a change, you've had like a line of bad dates, a line of duds, and then finally you're like, oh my God, I actually like this guy. Are there
Yeah.
any indicators that men tend to give women that the feelings are mutual? What should a woman look for once she's had a fantastic date, like an indicator so she knows like he's feeling the same way I'm feeling?
Yeah. So I think what is great is when they've remembered something about what you said in that day. Because if they come back with a communication afterwards and they said, oh, no, when you said this on that day, it really inspired me, or I admired that about you. They've remembered something. Or you might have mentioned, for example, that it's your mum's birthday tomorrow, and they come back and they just said, oh, by the way, I just want to wish your mum a happy birthday.
Oh
It's those
yeah.
kind of things that are so sweet, also and so caring and so attentive, because we vie for attention when it comes to our relationships. Of course, we have different love languages, and for those who understand what the love languages are, some might not know what the love languages are. There's five. It's by a gentleman called Gary Chapman, and basically, our love languages could be physical touch, it could be quality time, it could be acts of service, words of affirmations, and it also can be gifts. So it's really important, I think, for people to know what their love language is too, so they're able to communicate it and know how they want to receive love and how they want to feel appreciated and what kind of attention they want. So if somebody's showing up and they're just saying, remembering little things like that, that's a really good sign.
Yeah.
Or, for example, you might have shared an interest with them on a date and they send you an article about something that they've seen on it. Or it just shows you a level of they're curious, but they also want to show that they are interested. Or, by the way, you mentioned that you love hiking. I saw this article, or I love this. Again, that is showing interest after a first date. That's a really positive sign. Um, Also, I guess when it comes into how many dates you've had with that person is, do they start really talking about their love vision with you? Do they
Oh
actually
yeah.
start talking about what their long-term goals are with you? In terms of what they want to be achieving, some of their desires, or how they want to be treated in a relationship. You may find just an element of depth when it comes to your conversations too. So that's a really good indication that that person is showing interest in you. Also, the follow up, of course, if you've gone on a date and you hear from them, either I just want to check. I mean, this is a huge thing, and I don't think many people do this, but I absolutely think this is critical. Is that safety thing? Let me know when you get home.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. I just think, that shows you that person's level of just wanting to be there for you, protection, to make sure that you are safe. So, can you drop me a message when you're home? Doesn't always mean, again, that that person's going to be a long-term partner for you, but it shows you one of their characteristics, really. So, let me know when you're home, and they may follow up with a thank you again. Thank you for a great date. And of course, if they say, would love to meet up with you, if you don't actually sort that out at the end of the day, whether they won't follow up with you, by a text message or a phone call to say, just wondered if you're open to meeting again. Of course, that's a great indication that that person wants to move forward with you, and the feelings are, well, if they're mutual, then you would more likely say yes to that
Yeah.
opportunity to meet up with them. So those would be some of the good indications, really, that that date has gone well and that person's feeling it. And of course, we always have to make sure that you're feeling that situation too. So everything I'm sharing with you,
Yeah.
do the same. If they've shared something with you,
Exactly.
that is of interest, and you think, oh my goodness, they said that they like this. I've seen an article on this. You send it to them too. It goes both ways. It's not just about how one person is treating you, it's also how you're treating that person.
Absolutely. I love that so much. And yeah, the safety thing, like I agree with you. Like when a guy does that, I hope there's guys watching this because we're giving them a lot of tips on
Oh,
what to
oh,
do. Like
yeah.
they're gonna get just as much benefit
Mm,
from this video as the ladies
yeah.
are. But
Yeah.
yeah, when a guy asks me to text them when I get home safe, I
Yeah.
love that. Like and I'm gonna be honest, like those type of guys who always, that's probably why I don't like games, because the ones
Mm.
who tend to message me right away and they don't even wait till the next day, they that night, hey, I had a great time with you.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to seeing you again. Or sometimes they will make a date for your next date. Like, can I see you again? And they
yeah,
that same night while you're still with them on the first date. That's always
yeah,
been a good indicator. I've had great relationships come out of when, and that's how they start out. Like those
yeah,
seem to be the types of solid type of
yeah,
men that I'm attracted to anyway. That doesn't mean everybody's going to be attracted to that, but like
yeah.
it makes me feel safe.
Oh, exactly. So the planning of another day, I love that. There's a term in business called fam bam. So from a meeting, book a meeting, fam bam. So you know, if
I've never
somebody
heard
is
that.
fam bam. So if
Fam
they're
bam.
fam bamming you, then that's a really good indication that again they want to meet up. Again, the second meet doesn't always mean that this is something that is long term. Because remember, we're always making assessments. We're just wanting to figure out whether there is some compatibility there, whether there's some chemistry. You might not even feel chemistry. So some people say it's a red flag because I didn't feel any chemistry on the first date. It's not always whether you feel chemistry. That first date can be like a job interview. You could have nerves galore on it. So there might not necessarily be that chemistry on the first date because you know people are coming, we're meeting a stranger, you know. So some people might be sending their representative
Yeah,
into into that first date. And so sometimes it might take a second date or even a third date in order to find out who is showing up and whether there
right.
is that connection and whether there is that compatibility or whether there is that chemistry. So we have to give it, I would say, just a little bit more, unless it's something that really showed up for you in that first date and you just thought, I don't feel safe.
Hmm.
It's absolutely a no-go for me. Because sometimes we will feel that you have to trust our intuition.
So what do you think about if, do you recommend a woman text first after a date, after a first date, a good date, or do you think that she should wait for the man to text her?
Mm, that's a really excellent question. I get asked that quite a bit when I'm first start working with
We've got a lot of
my
alpha
clients.
women out there listening.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's like, no, I'm not going to do it. If there's an interest, no, then that person will make the move. Well, absolutely, that could be the case. I think when it comes to modern dating now, there's more of an acceptance that it's doesn't really matter who makes the first move. If you are coming from a place of truth and authenticity and you really liked that date, then you can go and you can just say, no, really appreciate the date. If you want to suggest maybe meeting up again, do it. There's no game playing here. It is simply a case of speak from your heart, speak the truth. And I really like, you know, when we can send messages whereby no, not only thanking them, but you're also saying in that message, or even if it's a telephone call, something that they said during that meetup, because it shows attention and it shows, you know, and what I really liked is when you shared this, and you really go into it, and then you can suggest a date, another date if so. So I think it's absolutely fine, you know, for a woman to make that suggestion. What you need to do, or what I would encourage you and invite you to do is to then look at the communication that comes back.
Yeah.
Okay. So even though you might make that first move, it doesn't always mean that that person feels the same way. So they may come back with, oh, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. And then there's nothing more from that because that might indicate, okay, then that person wants you to put in a bit more effort. Again, first time you may say, fantastic, really looking forward to it. So let's discuss days. Now, what would work for you? No, you have that open, no, set up the date with that
Yeah.
person. But if you are finding that person isn't being very forthcoming, it's very likely that they're being polite and courteous, and are not actually saying how they truly feel. So make that first move, but be very mindful about how that communication is coming back to you.
I love it. I feel like we've answered some of these other questions. We can talk, girl. I don't know how long. I don't know how long it's been because it
I,
tells me longer because I'd already signed on to Zoom. But um,
yeah,
let's look at the ones that I want to get to before. I think we're going to need a part two. That's what we're going to need to do. We're going to do a part two for sure.
absolutely.
But one that I want to definitely get to today is how
Mm,
long should a woman wait prior to having sex?
mm,
And I'm gonna let you answer that before I get to part two of that question. It's also juicy. Two
yeah.
juicy, two
How
juicies.
Yeah, I mean, that is a very, very good question. And people might say, oh, but I'm coming back with such a generic answer. it is, firstly, I'm just going to say it is down to personal preferences, and how you feel. Because I think we have to be very mindful that as women, there can be a surge of oxytocin that comes from us when we have sex with somebody.
You get
It's a
attached.
You get attached. It's called that love hormone. It's called that bonding hormone. And as mothers, that's what happens when you give birth to a child. The levels of oxytocin increases. You start to build up intimacy with that child. You start to build up a sense of trust and safety with that child. The same thing happens when you have sex with a man. Your oxytocin levels start to surge, basically, and it can cloud your judgment. So I would say be mindful that biologically wise, that the way that you feel about that person may increase, but it might not be a true reflection of where you are in that dating experience, because your body's just gone, it's gone like into mind, it's gone into a haze, it's gone into a chemical haze, like a hormone haze, and it's saying, you know, you might start feeling certain things that it's not really reflective of where you are in the dating stage.
Yeah,
It's
it
all
gets
about safety.
cloudy.
It gets very, very cloudy. So it's all about, being mindful about what are you, firstly, why is it important for you to have sex with that person, you know or it's a case of what could be the pros and what could be the cons, really, and have that, because you may have sex with that person and that person was completely into you. But I have spoken to male clients who have told me that after having sex, it changed for them, and it isn't because they were using that person for sex. It's simply because they realized that they still have some either attachments to another relationship and it felt a bit off, or
Mhm.
they just realized that they're not actually ready to connect with that person. They were in a haze, and then something changes in their body too. So I wouldn't say that we need to make this huge generalization that you are being used if a guy suddenly backs off from you. It can be so much other stuff going on for that person too. So I just want to put that out there. So you have to, that could be a huge risk. That person
Mhm.
backs away. How are you going to deal with that? What wounds could that open up for you, for example? Are you going to feel rejected? Could you be feeling abandoned by that? Could you be feeling a sense of injustice or betrayal, humiliation, for
Mhm.
example? All of these wounds that can come up for you. But if you're saying that no matter what happens, I've got this, it's fine, then I would really invite you to encourage what your principles are around sex too, as well, because sex is, in my view, is a very honorable thing to do. You are sharing your body with somebody. It's like your body is your temple. So in order to share that with somebody, what values do you hold around sex? What are your principles around sex? And if it is, I like sex for closeness and intimacy, then doing that very soon into the relationship isn't necessarily going to bring you that closeness and intimacy to somebody at all. What that can do is actually increase the haze. So how else can you get closeness and intimacy to somebody else without it having to be sex, for example? And it could be, it's just through conversation, it's through intellectual connections that we have. So where better in that dynamic can you get that closeness and intimacy without necessarily having to have sex?
Yeah, I'm a sapiosexual, which means I'm attracted to intellectual conversations, deep conversations, intelligence and sense of humor. If I don't have that, I can't be attracted to somebody. It doesn't matter if they're the hottest man on the face of the earth. I'm just not going to work for me,
Oh,
And I'm as a relationship coach, but I just come out with this, and I recommend it to anyone, and it's not because I'm anti-sex. I don't think you need to wait till marriage by any means. I'm not extreme like that. But I don't think there's anything wrong with waiting 3 months and 3 months of having a lot of face-to-face time, and getting to really bond and know that person, because I don't think 3 months is a very long time in the big picture of things.
yeah,
But when you're doing that 3 date thing that most people are out there, like, oh, the third date,
yeah,
you're sleeping with a stranger, and
yeah,
that's what you're doing. You've only tricked yourself and created a story in your head about who you think that other person is, whether you're a man or a woman, same thing. You
yeah,
don't know this person. You created a
yeah.
story, you sleep with them, and then you're mad later on that they don't live up to the story you created in your head. And it was just a figment of your imagination to begin with. So I'm all about 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think you should announce that. I just think
It's
you
a
go with
ticking
the
over
flow.
time.
Go with the flow and see what happens. Oh, because they will wait. They will wait that 3 months out, because if I think if a man knows that they're waiting 3 months, then that's a challenge. You've just given them some sort of like something to go for, right?
Yeah.
And then it's not, so I wouldn't announce that, ladies. Like that's actually the wrong thing to do. Just take your time and go with the flow. Yeah. They're
Yeah.
gonna be like, okay, I'll wait. They're out having sex with other women while they're waiting for you. That's what's happening. So
Yeah,
the second part of that juicy, oh, go ahead, sorry.
no, no, absolutely. I was going to say, what you're saying there on the sex thing, when you're talking about the 3 months. And also what I want to say is that it doesn't necessarily mean the length of time that you spend with somebody. You could be dating someone for 3 months and seen them twice or 3 times in that
No, you have to
3 months.
have FaceTime.
You have to have
FaceTime.
FaceTime, as you said, FaceTime, and it has to be the quantity of that time there and the quality of it.
Mhm.
Because it's one thing to have FaceTime too. What were you doing in that FaceTime?
We're not
Because
talking
it's
about iPhone FaceTime, guys. We're not talking about that. We're not talking about WhatsApp. We're talking about
personal,
in
one to one.
person. You're going and doing fun things together. You're actually going out to having little adventures together, do fun things, see them in different types of environments. How do they treat the waiter? That's a big one. We've talked about that before. That's a big indicator of their character.
Yeah.
If they're high quality. No, I'm just kidding.
It doesn't
Sorry.
make you high value. We won't go there. But yeah, I just wanted to add to that. It's about building up that trust with somebody. And I think it is a huge component when it comes to relationships and dating.
Feeling
Feelings.
safe, like you teach. So is
Mhm.
alcohol recommended? Do you think it's a good idea to have alcohol in the early stages of dating?
Yeah.
And you can see
And
why I've associated it with the first part of that question.
yeah, exactly. Because we're talking about two things that really cloud your judgment. So it can be the sexual attachment that you get to somebody and the oxytocin levels from a woman's perspective, and then you've got the alcohol, which again can cloud your judgment, and it can actually distort what you're seeing and block your intuition. So I would say, and I would encourage you and invite you, sober dating. I know that's something that you've spoken about, Mary Beth. Sober dating is that you go out there, and even if it is just 1 date, 2 dates, 3 dates, where you do not have any alcohol, I would strongly invite you to do that. Because yes, I know that having a glass of wine or a beer, whatever your beverage is, can calm the nerves and can make you feel a little bit more comfortable. I appreciate that. That can work for some people. Equally, you are going to see so much more and you're going to feel so much more when you aren't drinking the alcohol. So again, I'm not here to have that baton and that stick to say you must not do it.
Yeah.
But what I can do is I can invite you to consider not doing it.
Right.
Because in order for something to change when it comes to life, you have to stop doing the same things over and over again. It's the definition of insanity, isn't it? I think Einstein says is the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. It's not going to happen. So do something a little bit different, meet that person, no alcohol, and then just see the sense and feel and really tap into your intuition. I think
yes, you will be able to have discernment. And
yes.
a lot of people, I think, have sex and within the first 3 dates because of alcohol. I blame alcohol. So Teresha, I have had the best conversation with you. I'm going to do a part 2 to get to these other questions.
Absolutely.
And you guys have to follow Teresha on her YouTube. I'm going to put all of her information below. She's on everything. She's on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. I'm not on Twitter, but I will put even her email.
Whatever it is now. Yeah,
huh?
I'm everywhere. Or X. No, I saw a symbol now. The logo is X. Twitter. I think
it is
signs now X. Yes, something like that.
Threads. I'm not in the
know. I'm on Threads, but not really using it so much. But yeah, I'm omnipresent. Exactly. And I'm so glad you're going to drop it into the show notes instead.
I'm going to put everything in the show notes, even your email address. So, and your phone number.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. I do have it.
You do.
So, okay, Teresha, thank you so much. And you guys make sure you find her and you will love all of her YouTube videos. I'm such a huge fan of yours. And thank you so much for doing this with me. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's been an honor and privilege to have this conversation with you. And I really hope it impacts all of the listeners in such a positive, meaningful way. Thank you.
I know it will. Even the men. All right, Teresha, you have a wonderful night.
You too. Take care. Thank you very much.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.